Canadians are casting their votes to elect the country's next prime minister. The snap election comes just 6 weeks after Liberal Party leader Mark Carney was sworn in to replace his colleague Justin Trudeau after he stepped down. Canadians had become increasingly frustrated with Trudeau and the party in recent years over the handling of the economy, unemployment and immigration. Carney is vying for a full 4-year term against Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. A weekend poll from Canada-based firm Forum Research shows 60-year-old Carney is likely to stay in power. Earlier this year, Canadians seemed poised to elect a Conservative leader, but that appears to have changed with the return of President Trump and his tariffs on Canada. For more, let's bring in Matina Stevis-Gridneff. She's the Canada bureau chief for the New York Times. Matina, thank you for being here. Last month, let's just catch everybody up to speed because the tariff numbers can be a bit dizzying. President Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian exports that are not part of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement went into effect, in addition to a 10% tariff on energy products. Canada then imposed a 25% tariff on some American products like steel, aluminum, auto imports. How has this affected the election? Is it the issue?
It is the top issue, and not just the tariffs. And I really sympathize with the confusion there. There's been a lot of back and forth on the tariffs. But what's also been on people's minds a lot here is the broader rhetoric by President Trump. We heard from him even this morning as people were going to vote. He's sort of refrain of making Canada the 51st state. His sort of insinuations that the border isn't real, it's old, it's artificial. People consider that very menacing. They consider it threatening. And so not only do Canadian voters go to vote thinking that their economy is under threat by their closest ally and trading partner, but also that their sovereignty is under threat. That is weighing on people's minds.
So on Monday, you had mentioned this talk of the 51st state. President Trump suggested on social media Canadians should vote for him in this election, repeated his calls for Canada to become the 51st state. How have Carney and Poilievre been responding to this?
Mark Carney has built his campaign around these claims and has presented himself as a sort of anti-Trump. He's very serious. He's a professional economist. And he says he's the man to fight against these claims and to represent Canada, make Canada strong so it can stand up to President Trump and what he's been talking about. Pierre Poilievre has found this an awkward situation. While he has also said that he will resist these claims, that he will fight for Canada, that he will impose countermeasures in the U.S. in terms of tariffs, the awkwardness comes from the fact that he often does sound a bit like President Trump, and Canadians are very sensitive to this. Pierre Poilievre has spoken about, stopping radical woke ideology, cutting back the state, defunding the national broadcaster here in Canada, the CBC. And so together with his quite harsh at times tone, a lot of centrist voters who were really considering voting for the Conservative Party have been turned off by this sort of perceived similarity.
What are the other issues that Canadians are concerned about and might be voting for?
I mean, I think top of mind is the question of affordability. We've seen it in other countries. Here in Canada, the biggest issue, I think, is the housing situation. Housing is unaffordable, both to rent and to buy, particularly for those first-time buyers. Folks are getting pushed out beyond the suburbs because of these really high prices, and an overall sense that the economy is sort of stagnant. It's not in a recession, but it's not really meeting its full potential. Unemployment has been persistently high. And so there's an overall fatigue after these 10 years of the Liberal government under former Prime Minister Trudeau. I think the economy is going to be really central to whoever, frankly, comes next, be it Mr. Carney or Mr. Poilievre. And each man is saying they've got the solution both to the U.S. and Trump issue and to the economic troubles at home.
And you and your colleagues have reported that since 2023, all news has been blocked in Canada on Facebook and Instagram because of a law that required Meta to pay Canadian news publishers a tax for publishing content. What kind of impact has this had on Canada specifically during election season?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that reporting. I mean, it's very hard to quantify that impact. For example, it's hard to know how many people have been swayed one way or another in terms of how to vote because of this. But the reality is that on Facebook and on Instagram in Canada, you can find a lot of hyper-partisan content. You can find a lot of misleading and misinformation content. You can find a lot of fake ads and fake news. you can't find actual news. And this is sort of unbalanced diet that's creating a very bizarre and warped reality on those platforms. There's obviously a lot of misinformation and a lot of partisan content on all social media platforms and out in society too. But the news is also present, and there is somewhere to go to look for it. A lot of people still think they're getting their news on Facebook and Instagram and are unaware of this ban here in Canada.
I'm a daily listener of the New York Times Daily podcast. Was it you who said that you thought being the Canada bureau chief would give you work-life balance?
I mean, I did. To be clear, in the New York Times sense, that means I would only be working, 10-hour days rather than 16-hour days. I've gotten a bit of flack for that. I wasn't coming here to rest.
No,
But
it was so funny because the timing, of course, this is just all in the news every single day. That was a very memorable line. I'm not giving you flack, but Matina, thank you so much for gracing our show.
Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate it.